Hello and welcome to the Business of Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like-minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I'm delighted to speak with Evan Babins. He is the new manager event production from Scotiabank. He just moved this week. We're going to talk about his role and we're going to talk about the potential for a business owner to leverage vendor networks, about sponsorship, about trade show and best practice. So we're going to look at somebody who's in the dark side of the defense. No kidding, Evan. Thank you so much, not only for having reached out to me, but to take the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I've been hoping to get on the podcast for a little while. So I'm happy to finally be here and to contribute to the podcast and to the people listening.
That's awesome. Before we get into the point that I mentioned that are very relevant for event business owners, obviously, tell us a little bit about your journey. What's Evan's journey and how did you get into this industry?
Yeah, so it's a great story. I love talking about it. I'll give you the high level details. So I call it my 360-degree journey of the industry. So in 2004, I was DJing. I was DJing at parties and stuff. That led to AV production. So a good friend of mine opened up an AV production company in Toronto. So I was his first employee. I was there for a while. That then led into working hospitality. So I worked at event venues around the city in Toronto, getting that experience. Then I decided to go to corporate event agencies to work in production for agency side. And then finally, the last piece of the puzzle was working in-house. So I've been in a few different in-house roles in financial services, in tech, in startup worlds. And since I would say about 2019, I've been back and forth between in-house planning and corporate event planning. And currently, as of this week, I'm the manager of event production, like you said, at Scotiabank, where we produce end-to-end events for publicly and internally facing events for the bank. That's sort of me in a nutshell, and that's how I got here.
That's awesome. When I was younger, I wanted to be a DJ as well and play video game. I think it was like 30 years too early to have a career with that. Now, being working in different corporation, you were until recently working at Intuit. You're now with Scotiabank. Can you please first tell us how corporate are looking, in your experience, how corporate are looking at meetings and events, and what even business owners hoping to work for those corporate should know and how they should position themselves?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting time in events right now. Post-COVID, in the post-COVID world, we're seeing events have massive attendance rates. You look at events like IMAX and CES and NAMM and these big shows, they're all well above what they were pre-COVID and right after. So the industry, I think, is back. The industry is happening. It's an exciting time in the event industry now with the new technology that's come around in AI and in VR and AR and all these different cool technologies that weren't around before. We're seeing so many new opportunities in events and how we can leverage events for not only sharing a message, but educating people, entertaining people. And we're really seeing new ways of doing all of these things in events. And that's being led by the corporate sector. At the end of the day, the corporate sector is where the money is, where the budgets are. Working in in-house planning, you always have bigger budgets than in an agency world because you're dealing with a multitude of different clients who have different ranges of budgets. And in the corporate side, I think we're seeing new ways of doing things. We're trying out and experimenting with new delivery methods. You look at the world of a hybrid event versus an in-person and a virtual. There's so many new opportunities to get a bigger audience to the table, to hear your message, to hear what you're talking about. Whereas before you only had the capacity of the room that you were in to fill.
Mhm.
And once you hit capacity, you couldn't invite anybody else. But that all has changed now. So there's a lot of things that are exciting. There's a lot of things that are not exciting about the industry as well too, which I don't want to forget about. You still have people are not wanting to travel anymore and being away from their family and being away from the office because COVID told us that we didn't have to do that anymore and we could still be successful. So there are still people out there that are nervous to fly or nervous to be on site with 15,000 people. And that will take a long time to go away.
Mm.
There are people who have changed rules, who have changed industries since the pandemic because they didn't want to continue in events or they didn't feel they could cut it anymore or they had an opportunity to leave and never turn back. But in that vein, we're seeing a lot of our contacts and our connections that we had prior to COVID and during COVID all have to be reformed and recreated when we're
Yeah.
coming back to work with vendors and different companies. So I think overall, though, I think the industry is in a great place. I'm excited about the industry going into 2025. I think the industry as a whole is in a positive standpoint where people are excited for events again, where there was a big time frame that they weren't excited. And I think in terms of corporate ownership, there's a lot we can talk about, a lot we can unpack here. I think there's a responsibility that the C-level suite has that they're not fulfilling in terms of giving the people that are doing events the ability to do their job properly. I think there's still a bit of a handheld being done for that, which I think needs to be relaxed a little bit. But I think on the flip side, I do think that ownership and the C-suite is allowing more experimentation than ever before. I
Mm.
think they're saying, we don't want to do things like we've always done them because nobody wants that anymore. So they're bringing in people to event teams, to marketing teams that are looking to make those changes and to be that experimentation and to try new things. And that's really what I do every day is bring that mentality. So I think there's a lot going on and I'm very excited about where we are in the industry.
Awesome. We're making a lot of great points here. I just want to unpack one basically more in positioning and strategy part. I had a corporate events agency for 20 years. And so I worked for McKinsey, Johnson, Cafe de Colombia, all those major companies. Most of the client I was working with were totally aware of the potential and the strategic approach of meetings and how they were going to align face-to-face meeting with strategy. Some other people in corporate will, when you ask a commercial director, what you do sales meeting, they would say, oh, because we do it every year. And I was like, oh my God, if I was the boss of that person, they will be fired. They're just spending the money without knowing why. In your experience, do you see more strategic use of meetings? Because you're talking into it, you're quoting Scotiabank, those are major corporate. Are they now looking more into using those face-to-face as a strategic tool, whether it's to train people, customer relationship, motivation of the team? And if yes, how should an event business owner position themselves when they come to talk to the people making decision in your organization?
So 100% events are the number one strategy and go to market opportunity to meet people, to be face to face, to really level up your connection with prospects, current customers, with future customers. So no question, events are the number one place to do all those things. And I think they are that place more than ever in history of events right now. Nobody wants to be on Zoom anymore all day long. People want to be in person. They want to meet people. They want to see face to face. They want to shake people's hands. They want to give people a hug. They want to feel that in-person connection because of what we lost. And we're trying to make up for that. And so events over any other go-to-market strategy, events do that better than any other way of communicating with anybody. So it's 100% a yes, no question. In terms of to your point of what you said of like, why are we doing this meeting or this event? Because we do it every year. Such a 2015 mentality. And that's not the answer anymore. That can't be the answer anymore. It's not acceptable to be the answer. And what we are doing as an industry is we're asking the question of why. So why are you hosting an event? Why are you hosting the event in the location that you chose? Why are you hosting it on those days? Why are you finding the people that you're inviting? That's the big question that was never asked. The question that was asked was, how are we doing the event? How are we executing? How are we showing content on screen? It was more of a how versus a why. And now we're coming into the why and the strategy. And so where we're going is we're going to be forced to answer that question to attendees, to sponsors, to partners, to companies that are investing in our events. That's the answer people are looking for. And so from an event ownership perspective that are coming to the table, to whether they're pitching on an event or whether they're submitting an RFP for your event, the answer that they need to have is the answer to why. And so when I'm doing an RFP and we're looking for, let's say, an AV production company, and we're looking for new ways of showing content and lighting up a room and creating the sound in the space, when I do an RFP for that and I'm looking for companies to respond, they need to answer that question. So in the AV world, for example, it's okay, why are we using a screen and projector? Why aren't we using an LED video wall? Or why are we doing a circle stage versus a rectangle stage? Or why are we doing one stage at the front of the room and everyone's staring at that person on stage? Why aren't we doing multiple little stages around the space where you're having micro sessions and people turn their focus and change direction and give themselves that mini break that they need to shift their focus from one session to another? And the people that respond to me with those answers, that's who I'm looking to do business with. And I'm not looking for the company that's saying, this is our package and this is what we can offer you. That's not an answer. The answer is, here's my vision as an event producer. Here's what I want the show to look like. How are you going to help me build that show? And how are you going to make me deliver to my guests, to my audience, to my stakeholders, so that I look the best that I possibly can as the producer of the event? And so ownership in the C-suite needs, like I mentioned earlier, they need to be giving the autonomy and the freedom to their, let's call it, execution teams to be able to answer that question, knowing they have the support both financially and executionally from the stakeholders and from the senior leadership teams.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Actually, the way we position ourselves when I had the corporate event agency and why we're so successful is that we would get in with why question. We would get in with, it's actually the book I wrote in, I think it's 2016, Meeting at C Level, is exactly that, how you align face-to-face meeting with strategy. But we'll go with question like, what do you expect from this face-to-face? Who's coming? How are you going to measure success? What are you going to do afterwards? How does it fit in your strategy? So we would be called much earlier in the next meeting than just between brackets, the logistics. And I say that logistics is essential. And people that are looking at our industry take it for granted that we're going to deliver that. So it has to be more than that. So in your case, for instance, you're obviously doing RFPs, you're involved in decision making. Who else, in terms of position, in terms of role in the company, is making the call for an even business owner who's pitching corporate? who should they be targeting? They should be targeting only the C-suite, only events people. Should they be targeting?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's about the RFP, number one. It's who is putting out that RFP, who is submitting that. So generally speaking, that would be like the events team is doing that. But then when you're pitching on the RFP and we have a pitch meeting, like we would bring in, let's say like a creative director, maybe it's a VP of accounts, or maybe it's business
Procurement.
development team, like new business team. Like we would bring in multiple stakeholders that don't have to do with events to judge and to hear the pitch from how do we think this team will work with us culturally, and will they be a fit, a people perspective, regardless of the work they're doing. And that's a huge part of it. And a lot of people forget about that when they're doing RFPs, that it's not just about the product or the service that you're providing, but it's about how are we going to work together. I'll tell you a very quick story that sort of answers this question that I always like to tell. Normally this answer is, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in the industry? And so the answer is, I was producing an event in Germany. I was coming from Toronto. We had been working with this AV company. It was like a $500,000 AV build for this show. As I'm flying from Toronto to Munich over the Atlantic Ocean, I get an email from the AV company. Hey, this show was in 72 hours. We were loading in. Hey, we double booked ourselves on your dates. The other client gave us 10% more revenue. So good luck and all the best. And I was like,
Wow.
Cool. So 72 hours flying from Toronto. I like called a friend who knew somebody who connected me to another company in Munich. And we ended up delivering the show. We signed a 5-year contract with the client based on that show executing so well. And at the end of the day, when it came down to invoicing, the company that we worked with was like, I'm only charging you for labor. The gear was sitting in my warehouse. It was a slow month. So just cover my labor. So a $500,000 bill ended up costing me only about $30,000. And it was like mind blowing. It was like so crazy. It was like such a crazy week that week. But it's about, that really goes to you that it's about the people that we were working with. And the company that we worked with up until then seemed like they were great people. They did renders for us. They did floor plans. They did drawings. They did all of these things for us. But then when it didn't suit them anymore, they dropped us. They moved on to somebody else. And who knows how long they were planning on that for or not. I have no idea. But it's not just, and I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, was it's not just about we're doing an event for the sake of doing an event. It's why are you using that vendor? What is that vendor bringing to the table from a people perspective, and how you work with them is really how we can judge the relationship that you will have with these people. And at the end of the day, if they're going to win your business or not.
That's interesting. Did you have a contract with them? The first company?
We did have a contract. We ended up going down the legal road with them. It wasn't pretty, but it was solved pretty painlessly. We ended up getting back, we gave them like a couple of deposits that we ended up getting back. And at the end of the day, like, you never want to be blacklisted by anybody, because you never know when you need somebody. And so to burn the bridge that like they did to us and our company, I mean, that when I was at that company I was at, we did lots of events across Europe, across the US. It was mainly pharma conferences that we were doing. So they're massive, they're huge. And so like, why would you want to burn a bridge? Just tell me 3 months ago, tell me that you're not going to do our event, and I could find someone new from the beginning and not be stressed out 2 days before the event was happening. So it was a crazy scenario, but it just goes to show you, it's more than just the product. It's about when you're doing an RFP, when you're thinking about RFP, when you're looking at who you want to choose for your RFP, it's more than just what's in the presentation. It's who is giving the presentation and how will you work with them all the way through the process. And that, I think, comes back to how the C-suite can be involved, because the C-suite can see things from that lens better than people like me who are in the weeds and doing the work a chief creative officer, a chief operating officer, they're looking at things from such a macro level
Mm,
that they don't care about what the screens look like or what the moving headlights look like. They don't care about that. They care about, will this company screw us over last minute or will it be a successful relationship? And I think you need a marriage of both to have a successful partnership with vendors and with other companies.
absolutely. And I want to elaborate more on vendors, but before that, I have one last question. Again, assuming I'm an event business owner, I'm pitching another corporate potential client at this prospect. What do you see in the industry that an event business owner should know? And my question is also related to, do you see more outsourcing? Because that's what I'm hearing a lot. Are you validating that? And what is the best way to approach a prospect if you are an event business owner? Most of the event business owners in our industry are small business. Then you have the top 5, top 10 mega company, but the rest of the industry and the rest of the jobs are provided by small business owner. So do you see that? Do you see more outsourcing and how to pitch?
So it's a tough question. So thankfully, I've never had to be part of being outsourced for stuff, which is great. But there's a huge part of the business is on outsourcing and bringing in people on a case by case or project by project basis, like freelancers. That kind of stuff is a huge piece of the business. I think business owners, I think the worst thing you can do is cold call a pitch. I think you need to do it based on relationships.
Let's
Yeah.
take a concrete example, which
Yeah.
obviously I'm biased,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you have a company which is helping corporation
Yeah.
execute their events.
Perfect. So I love that. So that's great. So you're an agency. So let's say you want to pitch on Coca-Cola's annual conference. Instead of cold messaging or cold reaching out, I think you need to find someone there who can get you in. And that's true with a lot of things in the industry. Like a warm introduction goes miles better than a cold reach out. I get cold reach outs on LinkedIn and on emails all the time. 95% I delete because it's not relevant to me. It's not what I'm looking for. It's not who I need right now. And you can tell when someone reaches out to you very easily. A lot of people use AI and use ChatGPT to do those messages, and it's very obvious. And if you're not going to take the time to actually write me a message yourself, I don't want to talk to you. But that's personally. But I think so. Going back to the question, I think you need to get an introduction so that me as the brand knows that I can trust you as a partner. And if I've been given your contact or your details from a mutual contact, I know that you've already been vetted. I know that you know what you're doing. I know that you will do what you say you're going to deliver on. And I think that's the way you win business in 2025 is not by responding to 1,000 RFPs a year, but it's like finding the ones that really align with your corporate values, with your corporate culture, with the events you want to do, with what you want to be part of, and then honing in on those, finding those mutual contacts, finding someone who will introduce you to that company. Maybe that will get you to avoid going through a full RFP process with other companies involved as well. It might get you past that stage, which everybody wants. But I think gone are the days of a brand doing an RFQ and then having 30 companies respond. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anyone has the time for that. I certainly don't have the time to do that anymore. So I think it's all about that relationship building and finding out who can get you in to win those RFPs and to win that new business. So that to me is where ownership should focus on versus having their team spraying and responding to 1,000,000 RFPs a year.
I love it. I have a coaching program specifically for event business owners. That's exactly what I'm saying about aligning with
rocket
your
science.
values.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. It's not rocket science. It's so simple.
Exactly.
But people just need to use it.
Exactly. I that's another sentence I use. I always say it's not rocket science. If not, I would not be able to do it. But the
Right.
point is knowing your values, looking to align with your values and the type of client you're looking at. That absolutely perfect. Now, one of the essential part of whether it's for you in the corporation or whether it's an event business owner is developing the right vendors network. I plan meetings in over 50 countries in the world. I always have local people that can help me if something's happening, that can get me eating lunch on the Lalik table of the Maharaja of Jaipur with the Maharaja at the table. The vendor network is absolutely essential. What are your recommendations to source the vendors, to maintain the relationship with the vendors? What's your best practice here?
So I think before we get into that, I think we have to define a vendor and a partner, and they're very different. In my world, a vendor is someone who you do work with and then they go away. A
Mm,
partner is someone who you trust will have your back, who you can call on in a moment's notice, and they will drop everything to help you out and do what you need done so that everyone looks great. And you do it with them year over year, project over project. I'm not, I don't want that to be understood as exclusive vendors for different things because it's not exclusive. But a partner is someone who you know and trust and will have your back. And a vendor is someone who you call in for one thing and then they're gone. So I think we
mm,
need to establish the difference off the top. Then when we look at a partnership, it's about now it's going diving a little bit deeper to be like, okay, what am I looking for in this partner? What am I looking for them to do? Are they just delivering a product? Are they just doing my air travel? Are they doing my ground transportation? Like Uber can be a vendor, but also Uber could be a partner of yours, right? If you do 50 events a year in 9 different countries across the year, and you have sourced Uber to do all of your ground transportation across all of those cities, they are now a partner. You have a corporate account with them. You have an account manager who does all the work with you. They are a partner, right? If you book flights for people to come to your event, but you're booking a flight through whoever the guest wants their booked through because they have points with Air Canada or they have points with United or whoever it is, and you're just a ticket taker and you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, that's just a vendor, right? So it's about what is the partner doing and what are they bringing to the table and how are they making the event execution level better than if they weren't involved in that event or in that project, right? And so a good partner will elevate the experience in their wheelhouse and in the capacity that they have to control. And they will give you, as a producer, all the options that are available to you without you asking for it. When I'm looking at venues, let's say for an event, I go to different venues and I say, okay, this is the kind of event it is. This is what our goals are. This is what we want to look like. It's that venue's job to paint me a picture to say, if you go with our venue, here's how we can make your event a reality. Here's how we can make your event experience for your guests that much better than if they go down the street to the other venue. And so it's about bringing value, bringing the execution elements to the table. It's about making the production company or the producer or the agency looking as best as they possibly can so that they can deliver to the clients, getting the best profit off that event. So if I'm an
mm.
agency and I'm doing all the work on behalf of the client, so I'm booking venues, I'm booking all the
Yep.
logistics, I'm doing all the stuff. At the end of the day, the agency's job is to make the most amount of margin on that project to be successful, right? That's the end of the day, right? You say you want to make your clients look good. You say you want to have a good event, but none of that's possible if you don't have a good margin on your project, because then you're going to close your business. So it's all about leveraging partners for the best of the best price that you can get them to come in at so that you can charge your client the most that they will pay so you get the most margin at the end of the day. And so working with vendors and working with partners who will allow you to do that is part of the puzzle of them being a good partner because they've charged you what they need to charge so they're profitable. You then put your markup, your agency fees, whatever it is on top. So you're successful. And then the client looks good because they have a great agency and they have great partners and they have great vendors that are working on the event to make it all come together and make it all look amazing. So everything has to work together to get that end goal of total satisfaction across the board.
Mhm. How do you know that you can trust a vendor to become a partner? Because to me, that's the most essential part of everything.
That comes with experience in the industry. It comes with building out your network. It comes with working in new cities and new countries and learning new people. And at the end of the day, sometimes, like my example earlier, it comes with being part of a shitstorm. And it comes from being burned to know that when you're burned by somebody, you then know what to look for to not be burned again. And sometimes you have to go through that to know what questions to ask and what to talk to people about to know if they will burn you or not. Unfortunately, a lot of us have been through that, which sucks. And I hate when it happens. But sometimes you need to go through it to be able to come out the other side and know what to look for and how to look for things.
Mm. So one of the other point that you are mentioning in your expertise that is also extremely important for even business owners is sponsorship and sponsorship management. Not everyone's doing it, but some agency are providing that service as well for their client. Here again, what have you observed as best practice when it comes to event sponsorship management?
So sponsorship is like a sort of a funny thing in the industry. Some people love it. Some people lean into it like crazy. Some people want nothing to do with it. And they just want to show up and go to the event and get their delegate bag and go home with whatever they get out of the event. I've always been fortunate to work on both sides of sponsorship. So at Intuit, we were a sponsor of association events. So we would show up to events as a sponsor with our booth and speaking engagements and all that fun stuff. At the same time, we produced our own events that we owned that we would find sponsors to sponsor our events. And so I saw things from both sides of the ticket when I was at Intuit. And so I can tell you that when you're looking for sponsors and you own the event, there's a few things to get into. Number one, you obviously want to curate your event for the right sponsors, the right partners, the right people exhibiting. You don't want people that are going to diminish the event, and you don't want people that will pull the event down and make it a bad event experience for anybody. So that comes with vetting and talking to other people who have worked with these companies before and making sure that you're getting the right sponsors. But then on the flip side, as a sponsor, you want to pay the least amount of money and get the most out of that sponsorship from that company. And so it's a bit of a tug of war scenario sometimes where the event has certain packages. Let's say they have gold, silver, and bronze, and this is what comes with each one and the price points. So from the ownership perspective, you need to go into those conversations to customize to what suits and what will get the best ROI and nail on KPIs and metrics. Sometimes that takes some creative accounting and negotiations, and the right events that want you as a sponsor will work with you to build those custom packages for what you want and need to get the most out of it. For a very quick example, I just did an event as a sponsor. We sponsored an accounting association event in Toronto. They came in with their packages, and I wanted something that was in between the top two packages based on my for that event. I've known this event for many years. We've gone to it for a few years in a row. They know us. We're one of their diamond sponsors, like top sponsor. So they want to work with us. So when they started planning for this year, they came to me and they said, "What booth do you want?" Before any other booths were taken, I had my first shot of where I wanted to be on the floor plan. Then they said, "Okay, we have," the way they do it is they do their breakout rooms. They call them stages on the show floor in these like pipe and drape area on the show, outside the show floor. So you're not taking people away from the main room. They're always in that main room. And so they said, okay, we have 3 theaters. Which theater do you want to sponsor this year before we go out to other sponsors? And
Mm.
so knowing your sponsors and knowing the relationships that you have with your sponsors goes a long way. And for me as a sponsor of the event, knowing that I was asked first, I was given first right of refusal, I felt like they cared about me, that they wanted the best for me in my event, and they
Mm.
wanted me to do the best I could so that I sign again next year. And so that's what you
Got
want,
it.
is you want that relationship, that two-way street that will always lead to success for both sides.
Awesome. Evan, thank you. It's a pleasure to speak, first of all, with someone who's knowledgeable, but also sharing all this great insights. Because I want to tell you some situation where I'm asking a question and then what do you do with it? So thanks a lot for that. I just want to end this conversation with talking also about trade show. And how do you approach trade show? What are the new ways that you think that even business owner should look at trade show? What are the best practice for you there? Because I know you also have a lot of experience in that field.
For sure. So I think I'm always of the opinion that you want to be one of one versus one of many. And so what I mean by that is, if you're a brand, let's say you're a bank, for example, and your target market is young families, married couples, newly married couples, that's your target for your savings account, let's say. If you go to a banking conference, you're going to be one of many exhibitors on the show floor. If you go to a mom and baby show, you're probably going to be one of one. If you go to a farming industry show, you're going to be probably one of one. And if you're one of one, you're getting a lot more people coming to your booth than if you're one of many. And so I always go with that mentality of you have to do your industry shows. That's across the board. But also look outside your industry. Look at where people are not going, and if that makes sense for you to go there, because you will get so much more traffic. Because let's go back to the farming example, right? You're a bank. Farmers need to be financed for equipment, for all that stuff. They need to get mortgages for their land. They need all this stuff in terms of financial services. But I promise you that not many banks are going to go to a farming conference. And so if you can be that one vendor in your space, you will get all the attention from the
Yeah.
people who don't expect you to be there. And that always is a win for me. And that's where trade shows, I think the strategy is in trade shows, is be one of one, not one of many.
Love it. Evan, thank you so much. My last 2 questions. First, how do people get a hold of you?
I'm across all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm all over the place. I'm always happy to chat with people about event stuff, about anything exciting, and with great people.
Awesome. And my last question, we all have passions or dreams, excuse me, whether it's personal or professional. Like, for instance, I've been searching for years about the Mr. and Mrs. Pac-Man pinball machine. Haven't found it yet. But it can be as trivial as that, or something much more important, much more deep. What is one dream that you have that if anyone is listening, they should reach out to you to help you with?
So I'm a huge F1 racing fan. I have been for a few years. I haven't had the chance to go to a race yet. I would love to go to a race and meet some of the drivers, meet some of the team principals. To be involved and immersed in that world would be a dream come true.
Wonderful. Evan, thank you so much. I hope to meet you at the F1 Grand Prix, maybe in Miami one day, or in Las Vegas. And I don't know if they still do Montreal.
Montreal. Yeah, Montreal.
They still do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping even business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.